Hello, everyone, and welcome to People of Interest. People of Interest is a show based on stories from people like me and you. I am your guest, Miguel Guanipa. The hope of this show is that as we listen to the stories from our guests, we may be encouraged, entertained, and maybe even inspired. Today, my guest is a very special friend, very nice guy, and we'll find out much about him as we chat tonight with him. His name is Rick Stockhaus. Rick,
Thank you.
thank you very much for joining me. Rick
How you
from
doing, Miguel?
Ricardo, Richard.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
It's
Very
been
good.
some time.
Very good to see you again. Rick is a nickname. What is your full name?
Rick is my nickname.
Oh, from Richard.
Richard, yep.
Richard Stockhaus.
Yep.
Where before we started moving here, you were talking about how you came about learning the word tortuga, which means turtle in
Turtle.
Spanish.
Yes.
So what's the story behind that?
Oh, I have some friends at work, and we play around in Spanish. It's
Yeah.
their native language, and I make a mess of it.
Yeah.
He says I mangle his language, and
How does he say that in Spanish? Does he say it in
I
Spanish?
don't know how he said that. And so I came home one time, and we were getting ready to leave. And I looked at Shelley, my wife, and I says, "Tu eres muy lento como tortuga." In other words, you're slow like a turtle. And she didn't think it was as funny as I thought it was.
You didn't think it was funny?
No. And it seems like we're always late wherever we go. It's usually a combination of both of us, though.
Is she when you guys get places late, whose fault is it? Because I have a situation like that at home.
Well, I've been married 33 years, so I take the fifth.
You do?
So,
All right, that's good.
so I guess back to the
Yeah, that's what we
the
looked at.
guitar
We
pick.
looked at the tortuga was in your little pic there, which is what you brought to share
Yes.
with me about that.
And,
Tell me about that.
you had asked about an item or object that puts a smile on my face,
Yeah.
and music has always been a part of my life. I learned to play the guitar when I was 8 years old, and I I did not really excel at it until I was in my 20s. I dabbled. 8 years old, you're in the third grade. But music has always been a strong influence in my life. My mother bought me my first record album when I was in the first grade. It was Meet the Beatles.
Meet the Beatles.
Back when 1964 was when I was in the first grade.
It was like the first record that they put out?
Yes.
Huh.
And so we always had that music in our family. I'm the only musician, but nevertheless, my parents loved music, and there was always music playing in our house. My mom would sing when she was cleaning and working around the house. Later in life, when I got out of high school and was on my own and that, and I became a Christian, I started to play more and more, and then eventually went on to minister with my guitar by myself, and then later on with the band. And in the last 30 years, I've been in a couple of 2 or 3 bands, and so the guitar pick is just a reminder of those years. We
Yeah.
spent a lot of happy years. I stopped playing for about 10 years. Family.
I wonder if that's mine. Is that mine?
It's probably me.
Oh, okay.
I should have shut it off. Your family gets busy. You're raising kids and that, and I've just recently started playing, and that's how it happened that guitar pick was in my pocket. I've been playing again, somewhat passionately. I've been doing some open mic nights in the area.
Oh,
and
really?
that. Yeah.
Oh,
And so I've been playing.
you got to let us know then.
I will.
Yeah.
Played at Funky Murphy's recently on Shrewsbury Street, and then the Dark Rose Saloon on Shrewsbury Street.
Is Funky Murphy's, is that related to the Scruffy Murphy too? That's in this one in Worcester called
Yes.
Scruffy Murphy.
Yes, that's a new
Kind of the same
location, and they
chain?
also do an open mic.
They do.
They're gonna. They've started already, I believe.
Can you do if you do an open mic there? I can drive right. My daughter's right up the street.
Yes.
Yeah.
Faye.
Yeah.
Part of when we were out ministering with the band, something that I was very passionate about was not only did we talk to people about Jesus, but we talked to them about their lives. There were a lot of broken people out there, and we would typically have audiences of teenagers, and here are these old guys playing old-fashioned music to these young kids, but you'd be surprised the reaction at times. Of course, I'm going back about 10 years now. I remember one place that we played was in New York, and it was in farmland. There was a dairy farm across the street, and it was just a small church building, and they'd bus in the kids from like the Bronx, Harlem, from prison programs. These are like youth services detention centers, And 2 buses would come every Friday night, one with girls, one with guys from 2 different locations. And if they had not gotten in trouble that week, they were allowed to come. And, here we have a band full of old white guys. And now you have all these inner city kids that are, they're a little rough around the edges. They're basically in jail and come from bad situations, bad families. And they're coming to a program, a coffee house where they, the focus is Jesus. And you'd be surprised how closely they paid attention when we were playing, even though it wasn't their jam, And we would bring CDs, we would copy our CDs and bring as many as we could, and we'd give them away to them. They loved them, and, during the break, we'd go out and sit with different people, and, they always wanted to talk. They, sometimes you just got to sit with a person and let them get it out, and you'd hear stories that were just horrifying. And I'd like to think that, those that went away with Jesus in their life were able to, move on and have a better life later on, and maybe go back and help others,
So when did you begin to have this awareness of Jesus Christ in your life? Do you remember that?
September 12th, 1979.
1979.
Yeah.
I don't know how old I was, but anyway. So what? Tell me a little bit. Would you like to tell me a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
I had some friends who lived around the corner from me, and we were going to go out for a dinner that night, and they said, a friend of ours from Santa Cruz is in town.
Yeah.
And I said, sure, you'll like him, he's a musician. And I met this man, Steve Gregg was his name. He's from Santa Cruz, and he was a preacher. He's taught all over the world, but his home base was Santa Cruz and then later Oregon. And we hit it off immediately. And I did not have God in my life at that point, but...
Around how old were you? Not that I want to...
79, I was 21.
People. Oh, okay. 21. Okay.
So we became fast friends, and we even made a recording. He had brought his guitar, and so we had made a recording of some of his songs that he wrote. And later on, in life, I learned them and used them when I was out ministering myself. And it's funny, that was back in 77 when I met them. So I had not received the Lord in my life. It wasn't until 2 years later.
You were 18.
Yeah, I was 18.
Yeah, okay.
77, I was 17.
So you met them before. That was the first meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And we became good friends, and we saw each other again. And then in September of '79, I asked Jesus into my life, and my life, the trajectory changed. And throughout the years, I've played in bands, I've spoken in places.
Was that alongside with this community that this happened, or did this happen at a church, or did this happen
Happened at home,
in your own private moment?
my own private moment.
Okay, that's what I want to hear about.
Okay, all right. Back in the day, when people would go out witnessing about Jesus, they often would bring what they called tracts, little cartoon books,
Yeah,
or
I
just
remember
story
those.
books, or sometimes even it would look like a business card.
Yeah.
This one, said, my friend. See, I had two friends. They were a married couple, and the wife was sitting talking to me at my parents' house, and one night she said, "You need Jesus in your life." She says, "You're so close. You hang out with us. You like coming to the church. You like coming to the coffee house." She said, "But you're sitting on the fence." She says, "You really have to be on one side or the other." And she'd handed me this tract, and sometimes these things have effects, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just you look at it and it's thrown away. That night I was laying in bed, and I was, I felt like I felt the presence of the Lord, and I was reading through it, and I felt the Lord come into my life. I felt that it was a supernatural intervention by the Lord, and things changed from that day forward.
Yeah.
No turning back.
What were some of the experiences afterwards that
Well, you
experience?
you change your ways, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And your value system changes, but you're still a human, and you still have faults.
You're
But-
young. That was young. You were like,
Yeah.
21 is relatively young.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's a good thing.
And I met I started going to church at Calvary Center on Belmont Street over by Memorial Hospital. And I went there for years, and met a lot of good people, had a lot of good influences in my life. That's having Jesus in my life has been the biggest influence on me, let's say. The other side of me, my job, my home, my work, I would say that influence comes from my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Your dad was pretty impactful in your life.
Yes. He was a smart man. He's passed away 20 years ago this March.
Yeah.
He worked at Raytheon his whole entire work career. Was in the Korean War, and when he got out of the service, he worked at Raytheon until he retired. And he taught me so much about electronics, and sometimes we joke at work, and somebody will ask me, "Well, do you know how to solder?" Somebody that doesn't know me, and I say, "Yeah, I learned when I was about 10 years old." And what? I said, "Well, my dad was a technician at Raytheon, and he would bring home stuff for me to take apart, stuff that they were throwing away, and we'd, so we were in there tearing things apart and putting them back together, and he also instilled values in us. He was an honest man, good temperament, not
So
taking.
you would spend a lot of time with him.
Yes.
Doing that kind of technical stuff, like you bring stuff. Let's.
He would even teach me the math, behind the electronics.
Wow.
Teach me some electronics.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have two brothers.
Brothers.
They both worked at Raytheon for many years. I'm the only one that didn't work there, actually.
Yeah. But you're an engineer.
Who was?
Fred, you.
No, I'm not an
But
engineer,
you work in
actually.
engineering, no?
I don't have my degree, but I work at an engineering level.
Yeah.
My title is product development technician, but I do all of our design work at the place that I work. And,
Yeah.
and I do technical writing, and
So do you ever talk to people about how there's the analytical mind, and then there's the other one. What's the other?
creative.
The creative mind.
Yeah, the
So
more
now you're doing this stuff in the engineering field. And then you also like to play music.
artistic stuff. Yes. Yeah, I don't know which side of my brain works better than the other. Sometimes I've been convinced that neither side work very well, but
No?
yeah, your left brain controls your analytical thought, and your right brain controls your
Okay.
artistic,
Right.
creative functions.
Yeah.
I thought about this once back a while ago. We had a vice president at our company that was had a big impact on me. A good, solid guy, taught me a lot. Kind of a mentor to me at work. And one time he looked at me. He says, "You're like a Renaissance man," and I was like taken back. Here he is comparing to me to. When I think of Renaissance man, I think of like Da Vinci. It's
Yeah.
like whoa, wait a minute, I don't fill those shoes.
Yeah.
But he says, "Look at your resume." He says, "The things you've done," and I'm like, but I feel like anybody could do that. You just have to find something that turns you on, that lights your fire, that you become passionate about, and you can excel. I think the key sometimes is just finding what it is that motivates you. If you hate what you're doing, you're never going to be good at it.
But music is one of those passions for you, right?
Yes.
And that was something also. Who kind of brought you into that?
I had a couple of friends.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends over the years. I would have to say, well, it started probably when we were just about when we got married. I had a good friend that was a violinist,
Yeah.
and I was self-employed at the time, and it was the first year we were working, so I had some free time. It was summertime, and I decided I was going to build a violin because my wife was borrowing a violin from a friend because she thought it'd be fun to learn how to play it. She thought it would be fun to play. I thought it would be fun to make one.
Yeah.
Well, before I was done, I made 6.
You made 6 violins?
Yes. And, and so my friend Glenn, who I worked with at the time, went to church with at the time, we played music together a little bit. And so whenever I would build a violin, I'd bring it over to him because I really couldn't play a violin. I could dabble with it.
You could build it, but you couldn't play it.
Right. I mean, my guitar experience was enough to be able to, try it out, but to really play it. So I would bring him to him, and he'd be the test driver.
Yeah.
So he would take it for a few laps around the track, and
How did he feel about the
he
violins
liked
you were
them. He
building?
liked them.
Yeah.
And I have 2 of them still. One, I kept the original one, and then the third one that I made came back to us. A fellow that had bought it developed carpal tunnel, and so we ended up back with it in our hands, and it's a little nicer than the very first one. The first one looks like a first one.
It does.
And and so my mother has that one. She actually bought it from. It was kind of a funny thing. A guy at Raytheon had commissioned me to make him a violin,
Wow.
and then when he developed carpal tunnel, my dad bought it back from. I didn't realize he had done that, and so they had it, in their apartment.
So who was the artist in your family then?
Really none of us.
Your mother, not the
No,
artistic?
my mother is a cook.
She's a cook. She's an artist.
Lebanese. She's an artist when it came to food.
Yeah.
My mother's Lebanese, and she can cook like
Yeah.
to this day.
That's kind of an art.
My dad could sketch a little.
Yeah.
He was always building something at the house, carpentry projects.
Oh, okay. Carpentry, yeah.
I remember one morning when I was maybe 10 years old. I went down in the cellar and there was a drawing on a piece of paper of the whole back wall of the cellar, and it was all cabinets and countertops, and there was an entertainment center. It was a pencil sketch he had done the night before, taped it to the wall, and he built it.
Yeah.
It was the entire cellar. The whole back wall of the cellar was all, you know. So yeah, I guess he had some creativity in him.
Maybe a little bit from him.
Yes.
Building thing. Have you built all the instruments? I think
Guitars.
I think yeah.
Guitars and basses.
You built the guitar.
I made I think 5 guitars and 1.5 basses.
One-
I have one that I
Still
just
working on
never
that.
finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, you like doing that. And now, when you were growing up, where did you grow up? Do you grow up in
Millbury.
Millbury?
Went to school there and
Yeah.
graduated there.
Younger years, like how was that? Living
It's a nice
around?
town to grow up in.
Yeah.
It's still not too bad. I live in the neighborhood I grew up in. So my mother lives in the house we grew up in, just around the corner from us.
Is that when we visited? That's your mother's house?
Yes.
Wow.
Was it? Around the corner?
I don't know if that's Millbury or where that's.
Well, where we went to get the bricks.
Yeah,
That's my house.
that's your house.
And she lives on that very same
She lives on
street.
that
So
same
you
street.
could walk to her house from there.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't move far away. My brother owns the house now, and she lives with him. And my other brother moved to Connecticut recently. So, but we're all kind of close. My wife's family is from Northbridge, though. You know, so they're all in and about here.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you this. I mean, think about a moment in your life about a time in your life that was a very challenging time. And the reason why I ask that is because a lot of times out of those challenging times, we kind of become other people, or we become a little different, or we grow, we change. So I want you to think about a time in your life when it was a very challenging time like that, where you walked through that valley, or whatever it was, and you ended up at the end of that, and what you learned from that. So tell me about the time, tell me about the experience, and the scars, and the sweat, and the tears, and then tell me what happened after that, and what did that teach you? And I'm sure you have at least one. Everybody has.
I've got a
so
couple, actually.
You can tell me one first.
I'm trying to. Sometimes it involves personal stories that best not shared, but I can share some of it
Okay.
to make it.
Whatever you feel comfortable,
When I was young, I was engaged to a girl. We had dated for 6 years. And I came to the realization that she just didn't love me, that I was her security blanket. And we broke up 3 days before the wedding, and it was a big wedding. A lot of people. And at that point, that was in '81, so I'd only been a Christian 2 years. So I was a little wobbly, and my family was so mad at me because I had embarrassed them terribly, cost them a fortune. I mean, my parents had to make, 200 phone calls because it was so soon,
Yeah.
My friends, even my Christian friends, I belonged to a traveling ministry at the time. It was a show, and I was part of the crew, actually. I was the sound engineer for that. They even turned their back on me because my fiancée was part of that show. And so, like in any breakup, people take sides. And I was on the other side of the fence in most cases. I only had 1 or 2 friends after that for a while. And it was hard. It was very hard. I was just starting out in life. I had moved out of my parents' home to my first apartment only 3 months before that. And I felt abandoned. But the Lord pulled me through. It took a long time, though. And things didn't get real great right away. It took a few years. I was pretty broken, and sometimes you have to go through that, though, to grow and to mature, because you you know, sometimes when you're young, you could be a little cocky, and you take for granted everything you have in your life, including people that you have in your life. And that was when I met my wife, Shelley, in 1985. Met her at a Bible study, and I had here I was, I skipped part of the in-between. I jumped ahead 2 or 3 years, 4 years, but, when she found me, I was a single dad with custody of a 1.5-year-old baby, raising him on my own and working full-time. And I was down on my luck, I never gave in, though. I could see the temptation. I could see how other people do, though. Give in, drink, do drugs, or just go on welfare and quit, and not try to better yourself. It was hard, though. And I can understand how some people, sink when the chips are down. You're raising a child by yourself. You're trying to work. You're trying to pay your rent. You don't have any friends. At that, I remember when we sat down in the apartment on the couch, me and the little fella. He was it's October, so he was probably about 18 months old. We sat on the couch, and I looked at him. I said, "Well, bub, it's me and you. This is it. Furniture's mostly gone. We're in a cold, empty apartment, and it's time to rebuild." But you know what? I prayed. I prayed a simple prayer. I says, "Lord," and I was really humbled and broken. And I prayed, and I said, "Lord, I want to meet a woman. I want to meet a normal person." I said, "I have no other expectations. I want somebody who's normal." And 2 months later, I met my wife, and we've been together. We went on our first date on Valentine's Groundhog Day in 1985. So we've been together for 34 years. And that changed my life. That was coming out of the valley and leaving behind a tale of woe. So I have understanding when I see people that are down and out, and really life has dealt them a tough hand. And I can easily see how some people fail when that happens too. Because I didn't really have my family helping me at the time. They were so mad at me that I had, But you know what? Looking back, every time something really bad happened in my life, I can attribute it to where I made a decision. Life is full of decisions. Where I made a decision, where I knew what the Lord's will was, and I chose the other. And so any pain I felt back then was pretty well self-inflicted. But the Lord never abandoned you. You reach out to Him, and He's there for you. So it kind of gives new meaning to that famous. I guess it's a poster or a meme with the footsteps in the sand. Where he said where he said
footprints in the sand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that one, so don't have to explain it. But it's true. Sometimes He's carrying you, and you don't even know it. So, and life is good. Our life is. We've been very blessed.
So Michelle was very, very important then at that time. Then,
instrumental in that.
Instrumental. Yeah.
Sometimes you sit around, you're sitting with the guys talking at work or whatever, and somebody would say, "Oh, what do you want to get married for?" Because I work with a lot of young guys. And I said, "You marry the right person for the right reason, I says, 33 years we've been married. I says, and I would marry the same person again. I have no regrets. I would do it again with the same person.
And I hope she watches this show so she
Yeah.
can hear you. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good.
Now, this talk about, like, ask you a hypothetical. It's kind of maybe it's a kind of a silly question, but it is a hypothetical. But let's think about that guy that you knew that introduced you to music, and then later on kind of led you a little bit into beginning to think about Christ in your life, right? That's the guy we're talking about.
Yep.
Now, if that guy wasn't there, what do you think? What do you think you would be?
I think the Lord would have used somebody else.
Oh, okay, very good.
I think his plans are not thwarted by circumstance.
Yeah.
You know, I think that he, you know, I think the Lord, you know, he knows what he wants for us in our life.
No
I think
thought
we're chosen.
Hmm?
Definitely, we're chosen. You know. Back to that fellow, Steve Gregg.
Yeah.
He has a radio talk show called The Narrow Path. And a funny coincidence, the other day I was driving home from Upton, and you know, I was pushing the button on the radio, and there was nothing I wanted to listen to. And so I pushed the other button on the steering wheel that makes it just jump to the next station.
Yeah.
I was listening to the presets that I had chosen, and there was nothing. So now I was just letting it find whatever it would find. And suddenly I realized I was listening to a Christian station, and I was like, that's my friend Steve. He's in California, though. How could this be? Sure enough, I heard him say, we'll be back in a moment. This is Steve Gregg, and this is The Narrow Path. And I was flabbergasted that I just happened across him. And so I pulled over. I sent him a text, said, I just heard you on the radio. You know, apparently WVNE has picked up his show. It's syndicated. And it's a fabulous show. You know, it's on
That's
at 5
great.
o'clock.
The Narrow Path.
Yep.
Steve, what's his last name?
Gregg.
Steve Gregg.
So now when I can get it, you know, obviously most of the Christian stations are a little bit hard to get because they're not real powerful stations, but you know, it's on at 5 o'clock. So when I'm coming home, I can tune in, and some of the way home I get it, you know. And it's kind of nice to. It's like reminiscing with an old friend listening.
He's in California right now?
Yes.
You ever go visit him, or?
I visited him back in '79.
Oh.
And then again in '89, but I haven't seen him in person in a long time. We keep in touch through Facebook.
We talked about your father, saying that your father was a very instrumental person in your life, and through him you learned some things that you learned to love certain things, to do certain things. And if you think about something that on your own you sought to learn, that there wasn't any input from anybody else, but it was just you that decided, you know what, I like to do this. I like to learn how to do this. What would that be? Or what was that? What is it? Is there such a thing?
That creative drive, so to speak.
Besides making violence and guitars.
Well, you know, I've always been one that wants to know how everything works.
Yeah.
I have to confess, when I was young, I took apart a lot more things than I put back together.
Yeah.
And much to my parents' dismay.
Yeah.
Almost set the house on fire once. That was.
How did that happen?
I was welding in the cellar, and there was too much smoke, so I used the vacuum cleaner as a dust collector and set the vacuum cleaner on fire.
Oh.
So, yeah. Another time I was building, I could tell you a million of these crazy stories. I was building a car, a gig we used to call them. We were having races in the neighborhood down the hill in the next street over. And I had been nailing away like a fiend. And, you know, I wasn't one for putting away too many things, you know. I'd leave a mess wherever I was. And I was at school. I think I was, well, I think it was in the fourth grade.
Hmm.
And I got home. My dad was still home. He wasn't at work. And he had a bandage on his foot. Well, back then, you know, in the, what that would be the 60s,
Hmm.
hush puppies were popular, the shoes, and they had soft soles. Well, he stepped on a board with a nail in it, went
Oh.
right in his foot. He couldn't get it off. He had to get a hammer and pull the nail out of his foot. So he was pretty excited when I got home. Yeah, you know, we did a lot of crazy stuff.
And you like, you tell me about this, we're talking about this Beatles record that you got from your parents, right?
Yes.
Okay, that
Yeah,
was,
my
how
mom.
old were you? Like 8, you said? 7?
No, I was
8?
6.
6.
I was in the first grade. It was
Wow.
1964,
Yeah.
and I don't remember what year they were on.
1964, you said?
Yeah,
That's
that
when I
was-
was born.
that's when I was in the first grade.
Oh, okay.
And I don't remember if it was 64 or 63 when they were on Ed Sullivan, but I remember my cousins were over,
Hmm.
and my mother, you know, came out to the door and yelled to us, "Come on in, we want you to see this." And they had us all sitting on the floor in the TV room, and we saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Hmm.
To say I remember a whole lot about it, you know, I was either 5 or 6 years old. But yeah, she bought me that album, and I would sing along with it. And in the first grade, we had one teacher. You know, we would be in the same classroom all day long.
Yeah.
And, you know, part of the day on one of the days of the week would be music. And she asked if anybody had wanted to share a song. Well, I guess I had more courage than brains then,
Yeah.
and raised my hand, and so I ended up belting out "All My Lovin'" by the Beatles. And you know,
Not
cred-
too bad.
credit to the kids, nobody made fun of it, you know.
Yeah.
And so at our 40th class reunion, I was sitting at a table, and one of my friends came over to me, and you know, I don't remember really who was in my first grade class. I remember a couple people, but he said, you know, there was a Beatles song playing. We had music playing throughout the 40th reunion, and a Beatles song came on. He says, "Hey, you gonna get up and you know, sing a Beatles song for us?" And I knew when he said that, I knew what he meant. I was like, "You were there?"
He remembers that?
He remembered it, and I was like, "You were there?" He says, "Yeah, I was in the," because there were 2 first grades in that building, and so he must have been in my first grade class. And I had such a laugh when I said, "Wow," that he remembered that.
Wow.
Yeah,
I don't even remember being in the first grade.
I remember a little of it. Yeah,
I think in the 4th grade is when I started gathering memories.
yeah, yeah. I remember school pretty well.
What are things that you use when you that are things that are fond memories for you that you look back to and like to just think about and they bring you kind of a good comforting time and a good peace.
Well, there's a few. One of my big ones, you know, everybody, you know, Andy Warhol said everybody will be famous for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate. I had like 3 hours.
Wow.
I was, through a good friend of mine, I was able to get to work on a big stage at a big Christian festival at Gordon College. It was the precursor to the Loon Mountain Soul Fest that happens every year now. I believe it's at Cannon Mountain or somewhere else, but and it was called the Big Event. And so I was working as a roadie, and my friend was working as a stage manager, and he'd got me, you know, in to work with him. You know, we're volunteering, But it was great because we're working with all these national artists. Back then the number one on the charts was Sandy Patty, and there was Margaret Becker, Charlie Peacock, Phil Kagi, Michael Card.
Wow.
It was a huge show. About 5,000 people in the audience. It was outdoors. And they had hired a sound company from Boston, and the guy was stoned, the sound man. He got stoned. He was bored. Christian music didn't do it for him, apparently. And the producer came over, and he said, "We got to find a sound man. This guy's awful. He's wrecked." And he looked at him and he said, "Rick, have Rick do it. He's a sound man." And so I said, "What do you want me to tell him?" He says, "Tell him to go take a break. Tell him to come back when it's over." It's okay. He was perfectly good with that, And as a result, I got to do sound for some of my favorite artists.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It was just really fun. And the producer came over and told me, he says, "This sounds really good."
You manage well. You did it well.
I remember running the sound for Michael Card that night, and he was singing El Shaddai. And it was one of my favorite songs at the time, and it just sounded so sweet. And the producer came over and he says, "Good job." He says, "It sounds really good." And it was like, yes. It was like, it was just so much fun. It was so rewarding. Got to meet Phil Kagi afterwards backstage and talk to him. Very humble guy, nice guy, very talented. Got to meet Margaret Becker. It was just so much fun.
So music has been a good part of your life, then.
Yeah, I ran sound a lot. I worked for a sound company for a while, and I also just did it for anybody who needed me.
Yeah.
So I got to meet some people and do some things, and as a result, you get exposure to a lot of things and see people. It's kind of nice. Get to see things you wouldn't have otherwise get to see.
Yeah. I have a song called "The Joy of Living." That I found that out about a few years ago. There's a Scottish guy called Ian McCall, and then somebody sang it. Somebody did a cover of it.
Yep.
It's a beautiful cover called "The Joy of Living." So it's kind of like, I do listen to a lot of songs, but that kind of song always stands out in my heart. If I ever think, man, this would be the song that I could always play and listen to in my head.
Yep.
And it's always and I could listen to it and it never gets old.
Yeah.
You have a song like that, or?
Yeah, after this many years, there's a few, but there's one song that stands out, and I know I don't really remember who wrote it. That the chorus goes, "It is well with my soul."
Yeah.
Was it? I don't know if it was Bliss or somebody that wrote it, but the person's family was lost at sea and gone down in a ship.
Yes.
And he wrote that song the next day, "It is well with my soul."
Yeah, who was that? Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Horatio Spafford, maybe?
There's a guy, what I remember is the story, not the guy's name, because it was, I guess, right after or something.
Yeah.
He wrote that song after he lost his whole family there in the ship and whatever, no? Daughter.
To be able to say that "it is well with my soul," that's, yeah, that's kind of high up on the list.
That's good. I can't remember that guy's name, so. So what is what's new? What's been happening? What is in the future for Rick Stockhaus? What are the things that you have on your plate for looking into? Say, this is something I have planned here.
Well, retirement's not too far away. It's 3 years away, and we have a camper, and we spend
3
a lot.
years.
Yeah, I'll be 65,
Wow.
and so we camp quite a lot during the year, my wife and I, and sometimes the kids come with us. And now we have a new granddaughter who's going to be 9 months old next week or the week after, and so I'm looking forward to being able to do things with her.
Yeah.
Go pick her up and say, all right, come on, let's go run some errands. Let's go see what kind of mischief we can get into and go do stuff.
Well, how old is she now? Like
She's going to be 9 months old.
9 months. So
Yeah, we got a ways to go before she can. She won't be driving the truck anytime soon,
yeah,
but
yeah.
God, I hope she drives better than her mom did when I first taught her how to
Yeah?
drive.
Is it true what they say about women drivers? No, that's not true. That's just a myth.
No, not at all. My wife is a safer driver than I am by far.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
her driving record is much better than mine. Yeah, you
So
know.
thinking about enjoying life outside of the daily 9 to 5 kind of deal.
Yes,
Any traveling or
yes, we'd like to travel. We have relatives. I have relatives in California. A lot of friends in Florida. Michelle's family is from New Brunswick. You know, so we'll spend some time. And we have relatives in South Dakota, so we can spend some time.
all over the place, huh?
Yeah,
Huh.
you know, so I'm looking forward to traveling. Never been to Europe. You know, my bucket list is starting to grow.
Yeah.
London and Paris are
But
on
you've
that.
done some traveling before, right?
Not out of the country, other than Canada and Mexico.
Canada or not in Europe or anything like that. Huh?
No, never been to Europe. Would really like to go to London and Paris, Italy. I'd like to go to Cremona, Italy. That's where Stradivari and Guarneri and all the great masters that made violins came from, in northern Italy. Yep. Really would like to go to Lebanon to see my grandparents' homeland.
Your grandparents they're not there anymore, obviously,
No.
right? But you got some. Do you have any distant, kind of semi-distant relatives over there?
Not that I would know. My grandfather and grandmother came over in early 20th century through Ellis Island, and he joined the army, fought in World War One for the United States, and then he worked here and raised his family. And but yeah, I'd like to go there and see it.
And then, so when your mother didn't come.
My mother was born here.
Born here. Okay. Did she speak the language? Or?
Yes, she still does. She still
still
speaks
does.
Arabic. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I don't. I wish I did. I only know words for the different kinds of food and things like that. Real basic.
You know how to say tortuga in
No,
Arabic? No.
no, we don't eat. We don't eat tortugas. So if it's edible, I know how to say it.
I have eaten tortugas.
I have
in
too.
Venezuela.
Actually, my dad's family. I remember turtle stew.
Yeah. It's not too bad.
Venezuelan food, I would imagine, is pretty good. It's probably spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what I remember about eating the tortuga is it was a guy that lived. It's a guy. My grandmother kind of had this guy that lived on the backyard.
Yep.
He's kind of a homeless guy, but he stayed on the backyard. So she let him stay there, and she fed him once in a while. But one time we were gonna eat turtle,
Yep.
and he was. You never knew. You didn't know when he was sober or when he was drunk. Never really knew. But he had to chop up the turtle for us to eat it.
Yep.
So he grabbed the turtle, and there's his hand. I don't even know he's drunk. He's got the machete, and he's chopping at it on the side of the turtle,
Yep.
and didn't miss a beat. Just cut it up, and
Thought for sure the
that's a
fingers were
terrible
coming
story.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was waiting for, because this guy was. I mean,
Yeah.
you never knew where he was at in his head, but he was flawless with that. And
Yeah.
that was when we had tortuga. That's what I remember in my tortuga eating experience, because he's the one who.
How did they prepare it?
I don't remember how the way that it looked like when I was eating it looked like maybe they may have broiled it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's kind of
I-
soft. Tastes very soft meat.
I had it in like a stew. It was like beef stew.
Yeah.
I don't think you
maybe
could-
that's what it was, because it was very soft.
I don't think I could tell it from beef stew. It was very similar.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it really was.
All right. Well, here's a question for you. Thinking about, I always ask people. Let's say there was a rocket that was leaving the Earth, because the Earth is going to end tomorrow. And so you have one thing that you have to take with you before you get into the rocket. What would that be? Or one item, or one person, or
Oh, one person. I'd take
maybe
my
one
wife.
person? Take your wife?
That would mean I would have to leave the rest of my family behind.
Yeah. So let's say you give them a few more things that you want to take, a few more people. What would that
I would take a Bible.
be? Okay.
I,
There might be
I-
somebody else taking a Bible in there. So.
yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of stuff. What's your favorite book in the Bible? When you read the Bible, what do you put your tent on once in a while?
I like
And
James because it's so practical and direct.
James.
My favorite scripture, however,
Yeah.
is in Ecclesiastes, and I.
You don't have to give me the verse. In
Yeah,
chapter,
this is
just
going
what
to
it
tell on me.
says.
I think it's 13 too, but
Yeah.
it's it is better to go to a house of mourning than a house of feasting, for that is the common end of all men. The living should take heart to this. And paraphrased, it basically means it's better to go to funerals than parties because you'll grow wiser. And you know, the funny.
That's a pretty serious scripture.
And you know, it's funny that life is like a big web of connected events. First time I heard that talked about it was Steve Gregg that we had mentioned earlier,
Oh, okay.
and that was his paraphrase of it actually,
Yeah.
and it stuck with me. And so when my dad passed away, and I spoke at the cemetery, that was the scripture that I quoted, and that's when the rubber meets the road. You know, when you're faced with death. You know, and we can talk about a lot of things in life, but till you've been there, you know, it doesn't have a lot of meaning. You know, but suddenly you lose somebody that close to you, and you're, you know, and you realize, you know, what can we gain from this? What can we learn from this experience? You know, what has this shown us? You know, how can we grow? Because, you know, the Lord never wants us to stay still. He wants us to continue to grow. So, yeah.
So, besides making you think about your own fatality,
Yeah. Our own mortality, yes.
fatality,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you think about that more and more as you get older, too. And, you know, not afraid of dying, but there's so many things I still want to do that I feel like I haven't accomplished. So, you know, hope he gives me more time.
Will you have time to do the things that you're thinking about?
Different
How much
projects.
time do you need?
Oh, another 20 years at least.
Another 20, you get easy another 20
Yeah.
years.
So,
Yeah. So get
places
busy.
places I want to go,
Yeah.
things I want to achieve. You know, those kind of things. I want to finish writing a book.
Oh, you're writing a book?
I started 10
in
years
the
ago, and
process?
I laid it aside. It's mostly done. It's a novel length book. It's a mystery, but I put it aside and lost interest, but I want to finish it.
Are you the kind of person that has to has a lot of projects going on at the same time, or do you pick one and you?
I used to have too many projects going at once.
Yeah.
I'm not as bad with that now. Now I'm working on trying to finish projects rather than start them. I was better at starting them than finishing them. You know, so it's time to.
I'm pretty good at that too.
Yeah, I think that's human nature. Yes.
I'm better at having ideas. By the time
Yeah.
I usually don't get to even the starting of the idea. It's just the idea, and then
Yeah.
that's it. And then if I started, then I'm better at starting it than finishing, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So then you got to get back in that book, then.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that.
Mystery novel.
Yeah, it's like a John Grisham thing.
Yeah. Like
Political espionage.
suspense, political espionage.
Yeah, you know, Big Brother is watching us.
That's good. Why don't you get back into it then?
Probably going
You only
to.
have 20 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm about halfway through, actually. So
Halfway through the book?
yeah,
Well,
I think I've got
that's really
about
good.
20,000 words done. So yeah, I think I need about twice that. So
Maybe have somebody else check it out and see, oh, this is looking good. Oh, maybe you could change it.
it's outdated though now. So I have to give
Oh.
it a, it's aged a
So
little.
the phones like a big phones with the antennas and whatever the people talking and whatever.
Not quite that old, but it referenced the current administration at the time, and
Oh, okay.
so
Maybe you want to invent an administration that way you don't
yes,
get like, oh,
one that's timeless.
yeah, you know, the Klingons or something.
Yeah. Were you a Star Trek fan?
No, I heard of everybody knows of the Klingons.
Klingons,
Are you? Is that what? Did you like the Star Trek?
Yeah, I
I like
watched
the
them
old
when I
ones
was
with Captain Kirk and all. Those were
and
really
Spock,
good.
and
I really like those.
when I was a kid. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not really a Trekkie or anything.
No, I'm not. I don't go that far. Well, we're running out of time, Rick, and I hope you enjoy yourself being here.
I did. Thank
I
you for.
appreciate you taking the time to come over and talk a little bit. We haven't even scratched the surface, I'm sure.
Oh
But
yeah,
you keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing your creativity. Feeding your creative spirit. Doing what you do.
thanks.
Maybe making another violin or something, or maybe a guitar, and
Yeah,
maybe you can fix guitars. Because I have a guitar that probably needs fixed. No, but and thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming here.
Thank
very
you.
much. And thank you everyone for joining us today, and hope to see you next time when the next person comes and shares their story.